Hello, everyone. I'm Lana Zach. Thank you so much for joining me. Americans now have a third coronavirus vaccine option. The CDC has followed the FDA's lead and approved the single-dose Johnson & Johnson vaccine. The CDC recommended the new coronavirus vaccine for widespread use on Sunday. Unlike the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines, Johnson & Johnson is a one-shot dose and can be stored at warmer temperatures. The company is expected to begin distributing the first 4 million doses on Monday. It plans to distribute more than 100 million doses by the middle of the year. This comes as coronavirus-related hospitalizations and deaths are dropping. Still, the U.S. is approaching 30 million cases since the beginning of the pandemic. That's nearly the entire population of Texas, or about 1 in every 11 Americans with a confirmed diagnosis in the last year. For more CBS News researcher, Max Baer joins me now. Max, good to have you. So there are 3 different vaccines approved for use in the United States at this point. Is there a difference in effectiveness against these new variants?
Well, the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is the only one that had data out of South Africa when they reviewed it, had their vaccine reviewed by the FDA. That showed relatively good effectiveness there. The others have shown, Moderna and Pfizer, that is, have shown a reduction in neutralizing antibodies, which is certainly cause for concern. However, there's still evidence to suggest that against severe illness, all 3 vaccines will work well against both the variant first identified in South Africa as well as the UK variant. So positive news all around.
Well, the makers of the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines are actually recommending booster shots. Tell us more about this.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, 2 of the already approved vaccine manufacturers have announced that they're looking into booster shots to try and further provide immunity against these variants. One of them, Moderna, is looking at 3 different ways. One would be a third shot of the vaccine that they've already had approved. One would be a booster, a shot that both protects against particularly the variant identified in South Africa, as well as the prototype vaccine. The third option would be one that's specifically targeting the variant first identified in South Africa. Pfizer also looking at a booster shot. Johnson & Johnson also looking at a booster shot. The point of this is basically to try and give yourself more opportunity, your body, I should say, give your body more opportunities to identify the protein identified with coronavirus, to maybe give yourself more of a chance in case some of these variants, you come in contact with them. And hopefully if you have a second shot or a third, then you have a higher chance of being able to recognize this variant and subsequently being able to take care of it in your body instead of getting sick.
But Max, I'm still trying to understand this with the nation racing to try and get people their first shots. When would these boosters actually be administered?
That's a great question. So pretty recently, the FDA actually released new guidance for this exact purpose. I think, there might be a misconception that if you were to be designing a booster shot, it's going to have to go through the entire 11th month process that you saw some of these prototype vaccines have to go through. That's not the case. If the platform that you're using to develop these vaccines, basically the same basic science, if that's being kept the same, the FDA released new guidance basically saying that there needs to be some studies on the immunogenicity of these vaccines, but it maybe is more in the 3 to 4 month range. That's not exactly what they said, but they said it's going to be closer to a few months instead of a full year. So it's going to cut down on the time. It's not going to be instantaneous. But because the science for a lot of these booster shots is going to be the same as the prototype, they're not going to need to go through an entire study again. So it's going to be able to be a shortened second trial, but there will be science behind it so we know that they're safe.
Very interesting. Well, do you know why the makers of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine haven't yet applied for approval in the United States?
Well, they've said that they're still waiting to submit their data to the FDA. Now, it's a bit convoluted exactly what that means, but I think, suffice to say that because AstraZeneca has had a few different trials, they've examined, whether to do 1 shot or 2 shots, how long that second booster shot should be. I think the FDA and Pfizer are really trying to, have the data that they submit be as quality as possible. The exacts and the specifics have not really been released by the company as to the delay, and it certainly has been delayed. This is not the original expected time of when this was going to be available. But with that said, they're just trying to make sure that when it's submitted to the FDA, that they're looking good for approval. So I think there's really, because unlike some of the other trials, there were more variety in how they went about their phase 3. There's more to examine and to look at as to what will be approved and what that vaccine and how it should be used.
Understood. A question has arisen because there have been a small number of cases of people getting the vaccine but still dying from the coronavirus. Max, I'm wondering if you can tell our viewers more about this.
Yes, that's a great question. So, according to the CDC, with data through February 21st, so quite recently, they found nearly 1,100 deaths among people who had received the vaccine and still died. And these, to be clear, for a variety of reasons. And I want to quote directly from the CDC here because I think it does better than any words that I could do. Quote, "A review of available clinical information, including death certificates, autopsy, and medical records, revealed no evidence that vaccination contributed to patient deaths." Now, to your point, even in some of the best vaccines, like the Pfizer vaccine, like the Moderna vaccine, which have shown 94-95% general efficacy, that still leaves you about 5% to potentially still get sick. Now, it's been shown to be widely effective against severe disease, but they aren't completely perfect, not 100% protection. So coronavirus, you might still catch it, but there's no evidence to suggest that these vaccines are by any means increasing your likelihood of death or anything of the sort.
Well, let's talk a little bit about 1 versus 2 shots, because the Johnson & Johnson vaccine has a couple of advantages. It only requires 1 shot, and it doesn't need to be kept at sub-zero temperatures. In the big picture, Max, how important are these distinctions?
They're incredibly important. And I think there's been a lot of discussion about the efficacy of Johnson & Johnson versus Pfizer and Moderna, which is absolutely fair. But the bottom line is that against severe disease, hospitalization, and death, the Johnson & Johnson vaccine has been incredibly effective. Now, to your exact point, the fact that it is both 1 shot and the fact that it can be held in general refrigeration means that it can go way more places, and it can be an absolute savior in terms of maximizing how many people get fully vaccinated in a short amount of time. At the end of the day, these are all just tools in our toolkit to try and return to some semblance of normalcy and to end this pandemic. A 1-shot vaccine that can be refrigerated the way that shot can be is a breakthrough, and it's critical that it's communicated that way and that people feel like it is just as safe and effective as the other 2 on the market.
Slightly less effective, but in the overall picture of being able to prevent the most severe cases and deaths, we understand that researchers and physicians are very, very hopeful about that. I know we have time probably for just 1 or 2 more questions, and this one's a big one because pregnant women say that they are still not sure if they should be getting vaccinated. What is the latest recommendation, Max?
Yes. So there was some confusion because it seemed like this, and I'm talking about maybe a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago, there was some confusion because it seemed like the CDC and the World Health Organization had 2 different recommendations for pregnant women and taking the vaccine. That since got cleared up, and here's basically where it stands. If you are pregnant and you also are in a high-risk group, maybe you have a comorbidity, you should get the vaccine. Pregnancy doesn't in and of itself qualify you for the vaccine. Now, there is very fair criticism that there just isn't enough data on pregnant women for them to feel comfortable or to feel safe. That is being worked on right now. Pfizer just launched a 4,000-person study among healthy pregnant women, ages 18 and up, who are between 24 to 34 weeks along. They're going to be looking at their shot specifically in pregnant women. There's also going to be a study out of Duke looking at more than 300 women who receive, pregnant women I should specify, who have received either of the shots, Pfizer, Moderna, or Johnson & Johnson, and seeing them along, seeing how symptoms are, seeing what the antibody levels are, both in the pregnant woman as well as in the blood of the umbilical cord as well. So more data is coming, but there is no evidence to suggest so basically the CDC and WHO are trying to kind of, based off what's available, not say that pregnancy is both a qualifier, but they also want to be clear that there's no evidence as of now to suggest that there is a particularly negative effect against pregnant women. They just don't want to, because there's not enough data, they're just trying to say, if you qualify, and we're learning more.
I'm not sure that that's exactly comforting to pregnant women who are trying to figure out whether they should be taking it or not, but understand that there is still a lot to be learned about these vaccines. All right, Max, thank you.